I've been trying a ton of different replaceable blade knives this year. I've cut up over 20 big game animals between me, my friends, and my clients. We're gonna break it up into small, medium, and large blade knives. We're gonna talk about when I would use each size of knife, why I like them, and maybe some of the things I don't like about them. We're gonna start with small, go to medium, and then to the large. The small knives are really more scalpel blades than they are actually hunting blades. Each one has a little bit different features of how to release the blades. They all have a little bit different feature of how to attach the blades, but they're all basically the same thing, and it's just a scalpel. I have cut myself more with these little blades than any other knives, and it's because when you reach into a big game animal and you're having to get that meat cut away from the bone, a lot of times you're reaching in and then prying and sticking your blade inside that little hole that you've created, and it's easy to cut your fingers with a short blade. I've had friends almost fatally cut themselves with blades like this, and I don't prefer big game with this. What these really do well with is like small game. Predators, grouse, turkeys, things like that. These are really good for fine detail work. Even caping around the head of a big game animal, I would like this, but for cutting up an animal and skinning it, not so much. The first one is the Kershaw Lone Rock RBK. It has some decent safety features, one of them being that you can press on this little tab right here and then pull on that to get the blade out. I will say that once you get all the gunk and fat and gristle and stuff in that little blade right there, it can be really hard to get off. I would recommend carrying pliers on this so that you don't cut yourself while you're in the field when you have to change blades. These knives cost anywhere from $40 to $60 depending on if you find them on sale and which website that you go to. The blades are fairly cheap. You get them in a 6 to 12 pack for anywhere from $10 to $25. These knives are not in that many stores. You really just have to order them online. That goes for their blades as well. They can be really hard to find in stores, so if you're gonna get this knife, you really have to plan to have enough blades to carry with you on the entirety of your hunt. That goes for a lot of these knives here. The next one is the Havalon Piranta. This is probably the scalpel knife that is gonna be most readily available in stores. I've cut up a lot of animals with this knife in particular. Things that you're gonna watch out for on this knife though is it has no release mechanism. You just have to push with your finger right down here and then lift up. So I would recommend bringing some kind of pliers with you to keep it safe. These knives cost about $50 and you can find them at pretty much every Sportsman's Warehouse, Cabela's, anything like that. The blades are also really easy to find and they're really cheap. This is the Gerber Vital. It's probably the easiest as far as just getting it around with you. It easily fits in your pocket. You can see that there's a little clip there that you can carry with you. It would be a good everyday carry knife. It also has the best mechanism for release. You just press this tab right there and then you can lift up. It's the easiest one. You don't have to carry any tools with you. However, it's almost too easy. This hasn't happened yet, but I would worry that that blade would actually come out while I was cutting an animal with how easy it releases. Because I don't like using these in big animals, I probably wouldn't worry about that release mechanism that much. So honestly, this is probably my top pick for a knife, except for the fact that the blades are not that easy to get in stores. The knives themselves are sold in most Sportsman's Warehouse and similar stores, but the blades I've only been able to find online, and that's a bit of a pain. These knives cost right around $50. The blades are pretty cheap, but you're gonna have to plan ahead. If you're gonna stick to these knives primarily for skinning or cutting up small game, they're pretty durable for what they're made for. If you're gonna go hacking a log, they're probably gonna break on you. The blades are not that durable and you've got to be really careful so you don't slip and cut yourself that way. But if I had to pick just one of these knives to use all the time, I'd probably go with the Havalon just because it's the most readily available in stores and it's the most convenient. Next, we're on to the medium blade knives. The first one we have is the Outdoor Edge Razor series. They make a bunch of different versions of these. They come in 3 and 3.5 inch blades. I really like this one. It's a pretty cheap knife, anywhere from $30 to $60 depending on which knife you get. This one is about $35 to $40. I've used this knife on more animals than any of the other replaceable blade knives. It's really easy to get that knife blade out. Unless you get gunk in between the blade and the guard, then that blade will be really hard to get out. I would recommend carrying some kind of pliers to get the blades out safely. I've had some problems with these knives in the past. After about 20 to 30 animals, there's 3 little pieces of metal that are either chemically bound or glued together right here. And as meat and gunk gets forced into those gaps right here, it separates those pieces of metal and it'll actually break the knife over time. But like I said, I get 20 to 30 animals out of each of one of these knives, and the blades are really, really cheap and easy to find. I would still recommend this knife because it's only about $35 to $40, and for 20 or 30 animals, that's a pretty good knife. The next one is the Outdoor Edge Razor VX series. They make these knives in about 5 different types. This one in particular comes in a 3-inch blade. The nice thing about these is that they are interchangeable with the Outdoor Edge as long as they're in the same blade length. This knife in particular wasn't designed as much for a hunting knife as it is for an everyday carry knife, though I did cut up an elk with this and it worked just fine. This one looks a little bit more fancy than the other knife, and it's also about double the price. It's got a lot of stainless in there, and I have the same worry about gunk getting in between the blade and the guard and separating and breaking it as I do the other knife, and it's double the price. I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend this one unless you're just going to use it as a fancy everyday carry knife. It has a very similar release mechanism as the other Outdoor Edge blade. It's just a little button right here. You have to press it pretty hard, but then that blade just pops right out. I did have a problem getting that blade out with gunk in it, just like I did with the other one, so make sure you carry pliers. The third medium-sized blade we're going to talk about is this Muddy Swap blade. These are about 30 bucks online. The blades are about 10 bucks for a 6-pack. I don't really like this blade shape as much as I do the drop points on some of the other knives, but I did cut up a couple of deer with this and it worked just fine. I really, really like how the blade releases on this knife though. You press this button, the same one that you used to fold it, you press it and then actually pull backwards, and then you pull that blade right out. When I cut up those deer, it didn't have any problems with gunk getting inside and then having a hard time releasing that blade. Because it is only glued together or chemically bound, I do have worries that that would separate over time. It does not look like the most robust knife, but it did work for a few animals, and it's pretty cheap for $29 plus cheap blades. I would recommend this blade because of the safety features on it too. If you're up in the mountains and you're trying to replace a blade on one of these knives and you cut yourself, it could be game over. So having more of a safe way to release those blades is a big deal in my mind. Last but certainly not least in these medium blade knives is the True Swift. This is a really, really well thought out blade, and I really, really, really like it. It has screws right here instead of the regular glued on pieces. It also has a really, really good release mechanism. There's a lock right here that you have to push, and then you press that button there. Even when there's gunk inside the blade, it releases very, very smoothly, and that makes it really, really safe. I've been able to find these knives on Amazon for as little as $35, and you can buy the blades for about $15 for a 5-pack. These knives right here are made out of a little bit better steel than the other medium blade knives, and so you can sharpen them back up and they keep their edge a little bit longer. This is just a really well thought out blade, and this is actually the one that I carry every day now. I actually like all of these knives, and these are the knives that I probably recommend that if you're gonna just get one replaceable blade knife, get one in this size right here. Any of these 4 would work. My favorite one is probably gonna be this True Swift, just because of how well made it is and how durable it is. But as far as availability and simplicity, probably go with this Outdoor Edge Razor series knife. It's just available pretty much everywhere, and it has a really good track record. Now on to the big bladed replaceable blade knives. There's certain aspects of these knives that I think are just redundant and kind of pointless if you're gonna have a replaceable blade knife. If you're gonna have that thick of a knife and that big of a knife, you might as well just get a really nice knife that's a really good, well-made steel. All 4 of these do have a few variations if you go and look on the company's websites. These are all the hunt processing kits though. This is the Cold Steel Click and Cut. This is the True Swift. This is the Havalon Talon. And this is the Randy Newberg Series EBS Gerber. The first one we're going to talk about is the Cold Steel Click and Cut. It's actually a really well thought out blade. It's really easy to release no matter how much you've been skinning or gutting or whatever with it. If there's gunk in it, it's going to release and go back in really, really easy. All of these larger replaceable blade knives have thicker blades that are really made for just different purposes and to resharpen. In my mind, that kind of goes against the entire point of having a replaceable blade razor knife, because you're having to sharpen it on the mountain in order to keep it good. A lot of these blades are actually made with really crappy steel too, so they dull really, really fast. If you were gonna buy one knife, I'd probably go with one of the other medium length knives. They're easy to get blades for and are cheaper. I cut up a moose and a couple other animals with this one and it did a fine job, but I did have to stop to sharpen it. The next knife we have is the Havalon Talon. It's very, very similar to the Cold Steel Click and Cut, but like I said before on the other one, it's a little bit redundant because it's not so much as a replaceable blade knife as it is a swappable blade knives. You're carrying different styles for different tasks depending on what you're doing while you're cutting up that animal. I can see some benefits of that, but I don't use them that much while I'm in the field. Maybe while I'm butchering it at home. The mechanism on this knife is really, really nice. There's a little button you push and it easily releases that blade. It's safe and it's very, very easy to get that blade out. I would recommend this knife because the blades for this one are actually cheaper and more readily available than any of the other big replaceable blade knives. The next one we're going to do is the Randy Newberg series Gerber EBS. Just like on the small one, it has a really, really good release system for the blade. You press this button right here and you can just pull that blade out. It's really easy, pretty safe too. Just like the small Gerber though, it's almost too easy. I'd be worried that while I'm trying to cut a back strap out of this or something, that part of the bone or the spine would hit that and actually release that blade and it would just come right out while I'm cutting the animal up. This one comes with 3 separate blades. I actually have worries about the quality of steel because I've had a lot of issues with the blade chipping right along the fine edge. So it makes me think that it's made with a little bit lower quality steel than the rest of the knives. Last but not least of all the big replaceable blade knives is the True Swift Hunt Processing Knife. This is probably the most well thought out knife that I have seen out of all of the knives. It's completely seamless where you push it into the blade, which makes it so no gunk gets in. It releases easily and it has a little safety mechanism on the side. You slide this little switch right here back, you press the button on the back of the knife, and that easily releases the blade no matter how much cutting you've been doing. It's really nice, super simple. The blade quality on this, as far as steel, is really, really nice. I cut up an entire elk with this, didn't have to sharpen it, and it is still razor sharp. I really like the handle on this. It has a really nice rubber non-slip coating that makes it really, really nice to hold. It also has a really big handle, so when you're trying to get those bigger cuts, it just makes it really, really nice. It also has a gut hook, and it comes with a couple of different blades as well. If I was gonna buy a bigger replaceable blade knife, this would be the one. It has really, really nice blades, good quality steel, and it's just well made and well thought out. Like I said before, I don't really recommend these knives for like carrying in the field. They're big, they're bulky, and if you're doing any kind of backcountry hunting, it's gonna be a little bit bigger than you want probably in the field. If I was to carry one, like I said, I would carry this True Swift. It's a really nice, well-made blade, but really where these would probably shine is more like an at-home or like maybe back at your wall tent processing kit when you're trying to break the animal down once you've already got it out of the field. I wouldn't recommend replacing a well-made fixed blade knife with any of these bigger replaceable blade knives. Let me know in the comments below which one you prefer and maybe if I missed one that you like. If you haven't already, go check out my website at processedbasehunter.com. I have some hunting courses as well as guided hunts available in the United States and Mexico. Get out there, have fun, and eat lots of Twinkies.